Welcome back, nigga, and it's like that. You should host with the motherfucking most funny cash money, nigga. And we finna get into this shit with Don Cornelius. If y'all know anything about Don Cornelius, he was the host of Soul Train back in the 70s and 80s and shit like that, but they swapped him out during the 90s because he wasn't really fucking with rap. But same time, he was a bitch ass nigga anyway because he kind of was shadow banning niggas back then, blackballing niggas or whatever you want to call it. We finna see who all he blackballed and all and why.
Yeah, we were the first to do it, so so he's interviewing me, right?
Okay.
And like you said, I know how to speak the English language.
No doubt.
So he was already offended because it was words and it wasn't.
Soul Train was the hottest ticket in town for black artists looking to make their mark. But just because you were a superstar didn't mean you were welcome. Don Cornelius ran his show like a well-oiled machine. And if you didn't fit the Soul Train mold, you were out. Some artists were too wild, too unpredictable, or just didn't play by Don's rules. And that meant they got the boot. From Rick James's no-filter attitude.
Wait, by the way, has anybody ever seen Don Cornelius dance? He's got his own dance. It's called The Cool. You just stand there.
To rap groups that had Don side-eyeing the entire genre. Some of music's biggest names like Prince might have found themselves unofficially blacklisted. So, who made Don's Do Not Invite list? Let's get into it. Rick James and Don Cornelius had the kind of interviews that felt less like a casual chat and more like a high-stakes verbal duel, where every smile hid a sharp edge. On the surface, it was all respect and good humor, compliments, laughter, the usual act. But underneath, the tension was thick, like they were both waiting for the other to slip up. Rick wasn't new to Soul Train. He had history with the show, and Don made sure to remind him of it. In one interview, he started warm. Rick played along, almost sentimental, saying something about how Soul Train was, where he learned to dance. Don basically said that wasn't particularly a good thing. That one landed funny, but he wasn't about to let Don have the last word. Instead, he flipped it, cracking jokes about Don's legendary ability to stand completely still and call it a dance move. They called it banter, but the audience could tell it wasn't just fun and games.
Wait, by the way, has anybody ever seen Don Cornelius dance? He's got his own dance. It's called The Cool. You just stand there.
In another interview, Rick, never one to miss a moment, made sure his look got some attention. The outfit, the attitude, it was all part of the package. Don tried to keep up, but this was Rick's stage. But Rick ran through a list of his band members like he was shouting out an exclusive club, making sure everyone knew who was rolling with him. Everything's low-key chaotic with Rick, and somewhere in all that chaos, Don looked like he was regretting ever asking Rick to explain anything.
You have one shoe missing, just put it on. It's called Fun Wave.
Then there's that interview, the one where Don thought he'd get the last word. That's where it got really interesting. Rick was flexing about his record-breaking shows, listing stadium numbers like a rock star tallying conquests. Don congratulated him, but with that tone, the kind that sounded friendly, but had just enough doubt in it to sting. Rick caught it immediately. He reminded Don that the last time he was on the show, Don wasn't so sure about his success. And Don, he actually admitted it. Straight up told Rick he had doubted him, but there he was, sitting across from the man who proved him wrong. Rick took the win with a smirk, while Don tried to brush it off.
For you.
Yes, Don.
Couldn't happen to a better person.
Hey, well, that's what I said last time I was on your show, and you disagreed with me.
Well, I've been wrong before, brother. You know, I know I said you would never be nothing.
What looked like playful back and forth on
Okay, first of all, bitch ass nigga, I know you ain't just try to say that to my face, bro. This was that shit I was talking about. He a bitch ass nigga. He do shit like this that kind of piss you off. Like he wasn't paying his dancers and shit for dumb ass reasons. Don Cornelius was a bitch. That's why I love Rick James, because Rick James always demanded respect within the industry. The only thing is he was just too caught up on the drugs. But if he would have been off the drugs, then he would have been able to take this shit to a chokehold. People don't even know his depths of like composing and writing songs for other niggas. But yeah, no, Don Cornelius a bitch. I don't know why he had say no shit like this to this man's face. Like, that's so disrespectful.
Behind the scenes, it was a whole different story. They clashed hard. Rick wasn't the kind of artist to play it safe, and Don wasn't the kind of host to let chaos run unchecked. From the jump, Rick's energy was overwhelming. The audience ate it up, but Don had questions. His flashy look, his larger-than-life presence, his refusal to tone it down. It was clear Don saw Rick as unpredictable, and Rick saw Don as out of touch.
Now I gotta eat my words. I said the same thing about you, and I was true.
I know that's motherfucking right, bitch ass nigga. I said the same thing about your bitch ass, and look at us. Fuck you talking about. I was right. Fuck you talking about. You was wrong. I was right. Fuck you talking about. Like he said, he got a witty comeback right on spot, right on time, right on cue. He ain't playing with that nigga, and I respect that.
Things really started shifting when Don put Rick on the spot about his, let's call it, colorful reputation. And Rick, never one to back down, leaned into it, basically saying that unpredictability was what made him a star. The tension, you could feel it through the screen. What used to feel like a performance started looking personal. Then came the moment that sealed the deal. Rick made it known that he thought Soul Train was getting stale, that it wasn't keeping up, that it needed to make space for artists like him who were shaking things up. That comment didn't just get back to Don, it stuck. And let's just say, he wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for Rick after that. Slowly but surely, Rick was edged out, his appearances becoming fewer and fewer until they stopped altogether. And honestly, it made sense. Rick James wasn't built for playing nice, and Soul Train wasn't built to handle someone like him long term. He had already left his mark on the stage, on the show, on Don himself. But keeping him around, that was a whole different conversation. Like I said earlier, Rick was, let's call it, outspoken. Some would call him chaotic. Rick was not one to stay quiet, and when MTV kept ignoring his Super Freak video, he let them have it. He called them out for shutting out black artists, and while the network eventually changed its tune, they put their energy into hyping up Michael Jackson and Prince instead of giving Rick his moment. That bridge burned.
These bitch ass niggas with these commercials, man. I don't want to see these damn YouTube commercials. God damn it.
And that wasn't the only one. Things with his record label, Motown, got messy too. His demands were getting bigger, his behavior more unpredictable, and the final straw, a meeting with the label's president that turned into a full-blown spectacle. Let's just say it involved a confrontation and an impromptu party favor situation. Motown saw where this was heading and quietly started shifting their focus to other artists. Hello, Lionel Richie. Between that and his growing list of problems, the industry started pulling away. Less airplay, fewer opportunities, and a lot of doors that once swung open were suddenly locked shut.
And I'm talking about albums that sold millions of copies. Every album we did, we never failed to have an ounce or two sitting right there on the console.
Really?
A big bag of Quaaludes, okay? Cristal champagne and Jack Black bourbon, and all at our beck and command. Right?
See, Rick James was always a walking contradiction. Charismatic, talented, and undeniably reckless. By the 80s, he had earned his title as the King of Funk, turning out slick R&B hits while burning through money and relationships just as fast. But by the early 90s, the headlines weren't about his music anymore.
Rick was my brother too. We hung out all the time, and so one of the almost a prerequisite of being with Rick was to be high, so we be getting high and
back in 19...
Hey, he said it though. He at least smoking honest shit. He was smoking and he getting high and sniffing coke with that nigga. He was kicking it with that nigga. But this is what I was talking about. He damaged his career through all his addictions and all his issues and shit. And he was actually a very talented artist. People just really don't want to give him his credit because he got blackballed and all that shit through the industry.
79. Long before his legal troubles became front page news, a 15-year-old girl living in a New York youth detention center claimed James had visited the facility. She didn't know who he was, but the other girls were excited. Almost immediately, she said he made her uncomfortable with inappropriate comments. Later that day, as she lay in her room reading, James allegedly came in, pinned her down. She said he warned her to stay quiet, threatening, "Shut up and quit moving or I'll cut you." The alleged attack would haunt her for decades, and in 2020, she filed a lawsuit against his estate, seeking damages for the trauma she claimed had followed her ever since. By the early 90s, James's...
We know there's some bullshit because she did it after he died. Fuck you talking about. If you attacking the estate, you're lying. You attack the estate, you're lying. You should have ran that shit down when they was alive. Don't wait until after they die. And it ain't no like motherfuckers could be lying and all that. They could be telling the truth, yeah. But if you was really about like your actual justice, you wouldn't be trying to sue the estate. You You would be trying to seek justice in your story. If you was trying to sue the person, I could see you was trying to sue the person alive. You waited till after all that time, so you know they can't defend themselves.
Career had been through its own roller coaster. He'd found success in the late 70s with songs like You and I and Mary Jane, but his newfound fame only fueled his addiction. By the end of the decade, stronger grip on him than the industry did. He got a brief boost in 1990 when MC Hammer's You Can't Touch. This turned Super Freak into a crossover rap hit, earning James his first Grammy. But any goodwill he had left was obliterated when, in August 1991, he and his girlfriend, Tanya Hijazi, were arrested for a crime straight out of a horror movie. A 24-year-old woman named Frances Alley accused James and Hijazi of holding her captive in his Hollywood Hills mansion for 2 days. She said they burned her legs and stomach with a crack pipe. As if that wasn't bad enough, while out on bail for that case, James allegedly assaulted another woman, a music executive named Mary Sauger. She claimed James and Hijazi held her hostage for 20 hours in a West Hollywood hotel room and beat her. When the trial finally happened in 1993, it was a spectacle. James sobbed on the stand and even asked the judge for a weekend release so he could marry Hijazi, a request that was quickly denied. The court didn't buy his performance. He was convicted on charges of assault, false imprisonment, and drug offenses. The torture charge was dropped, but it didn't matter. He was sentenced to 5 years and 4 months behind bars. Hijazi took a plea deal and served 15 months.
I know I'm not no punk. You know, number one, I mean,
That's some bullshit. If you ever actually look at the situation with crimes and shit with men and women, it's always that situation where the judge get them that type of leniency with the nigga gotta get all these years and shit. That shit crazy. Well, she got 15 months, he get 5 years. That's wild as fuck. But we doing the same crime.
whole bottom line is I had a blanket of love in prison because I'm real. I mean, if I had walked in prison with some kind of uppity attitude, if I had walked in prison thinking that I was this or I was that.
Prison, James later claimed, saved his life. If he hadn't been locked up, he believed he would have overdosed. While serving time at Folsom State Prison, he wrote over 300 songs. He was released in 1996 after serving just over 2 years. And by 1997, he finally got his wish. He married Hijazi 6 years after their infamous arrest. And 5 years after their son, Tasman, was born. Even after prison, trouble still seemed to follow him. In 2002, he was investigated for allegedly assaulting a woman at his home. 2 years later, he was dead. Then, in 2020, the past came back to haunt his name once again when the woman from 1979 stepped forward with her lawsuit. Decades later, Rick James remained as controversial in death as he was in life. A legend, a cautionary tale, and a man who burned bright and crashed hard. Okay, back to other artists.
Man, look, when it comes to Rick James, his past is difficult as fuck. Some of this shit might be true, some of this shit might be false, but one thing I will say about Rick James is Rick James was one of the most talented, dopest black artists, or just artists, period, that came out of Motown, or came out of the 80s and the 70s, really came out of the 70s. If it wasn't him, we wouldn't have Prince, we wouldn't have none of that. A lot of Michael shit kind of was inspired through Rick James, but as far as that crack pipe case and all that, we might have to go up in and all that, but yeah, that shit crazy. I ain't know he had this many sexual assault cases either. Actually, that's also wild as fuck. But I know for a fact Rick James love women. I never really seen him too much, you know what I'm saying? Usually they say he beating and slapping niggas up, but we might have to do our research into that one. But I'm gonna leave the link in the description. Y'all let me know what y'all think. Personally, I think Rick James and Bobby Brown, like, they two dope individuals who could have really went far, but like the drugs just caught too deep of a hold onto their careers, and it just really fucked them up and took them from off the path of where they was going and how far of greatness they could have became, especially with Bobby. Cause that nigga was like Usher before Usher, Chris Brown before Chris Brown. Wasn't nobody doing all that jumping and all that bouncing around like him on stage. Niggas don't, I don't know if niggas did more history, but we're gonna dig into some of these other characters also. So we're gonna get into this shit. Y'all let me know what y'all think. I'm out. Fuck is you talking about?
Gotta know your purpose, understand what worth is. They snakes is lurking, observing, trying to close your curtain.